President Trump?
We had an election. Joe Biden was, the votes were counted. Joe Biden was announced the winner. Joe Biden won the election. There are those who believe that there was, the election isn't valid, but again, as a citizen, a doctor, and as a candidate, I have to trust the process in place, and I do, and that's what I said. We had an election, we counted the ballots, Joe Biden was announced a winner, he won the election. Well, there are 4 issues, and it's from the time I said I was interested in running for governor again. First is public safety. Again, safe streets, safe property. Second, homeless off the streets once and for all, for their good and for our good. Much better education and training for our students and our citizens, because that gives you the ability to have a great life, and real stimulation of the jobs economy. As we know, for instance, Intel, who has a big R&D effort in Oregon when it comes to production, and production workers are $150,000 a year to make chips. Well, we got $20 billion going to Arizona and up to $100 billion going to Ohio, and those really hurt true working class people and can lift them from poverty to a great job. And so those are the 4 areas. So Intel is one of our prime companies in Oregon, and they always have to be loved and wooed and such. And when you have an inkling that they want to create production facilities in Oregon, you meet right away and you have to find out, what do they need? What do they need to come here in terms of being successful? You're not looking to guarantee their success. They have to guarantee their own success through their products and innovation. But what do we need to do to get them here? And clearly we have land use planning issues. You know, land use planning in 1970 had to do with despoiling the environment and sprawl, and that's not our issue today. And most laws need to be looked at 5-10 years after they're put into place, because the problem that was there when they were created usually is fixed if it's a good law, and we did a good job with sprawl and environmental degradation. So we need to come forward with a plan that allows manufacturers such as Intel, because the COVID pandemic tells us we need to have manufacturing in America and in Oregon. How do we make sure we have the land and the structure available so that they can build plants and be successful? Yeah, huge problem in Oregon. So again, if we're going to participate in an economy that lets everyday Oregonians who have education and training participate in the prosperity of the future, in which we bring back manufacturing supply chains to America and to Oregon, we're going to have to look at laws that were passed 50 years ago for a specific purpose that are now harming us, and that factors into housing and affordable housing. And how do we modify it and still protect our environment and prevent sprawl? We have to be able to do that. We can't live in the past, and those laws of the past can harm us. Well, again, we need more law enforcement. We just don't have enough men and women that are out there on the front lines. Our mayor of Salem today gave his final State of the City address, and yeah, you probably need to double or triple the police force in Salem. And again, we're not looking to have police violence, and we're not looking to militarize society. What we're really looking for are women and men that will be out in society and protect us and protect our property. I remember when they talked about community policing after the Watts riots. That's from the 60s. And part of that was to have a layered approach to law enforcement in the community. And I think a good example of that is Disneyland. I actually took a vacation with my adult son and daughter to Disneyland and actually rode the roller coasters and stuff, and I'm still intact. And, but it's interesting, you go into Disneyland and you go through security, but after that, security is invisible. It's there. It's absolutely there, and it feels so safe because it is safe, and you have all kinds of people that are there with their families, and racial groups and genders and economic groups and people from America and from throughout the world, and they can create that safe environment without you noticing it. So policing, and if you turn it over to law enforcement, what you want is you want to have invisible, great security. Yeah, there's going to be some uniformed police officers, but you need to think of it in a much more holistic way. I really want it invisible or low visibility where it can be, but again, you know you're safe because you are safe. It's about leadership. So leadership is about a lot of what the governor is going to have to do, whether you talk about public safety, homelessness, education and training, better business environment, is to take the disparate elements that are not working together, not coordinate together, federal, state, metro, city, county, and get them on the same page. And what you say to an area like Portland, but all of Oregon, is we need people safe and property safe, and we need to create that environment. We need to put our resources together so we don't have multiple overheads, which is common. You spend all this money on overhead for every program, and there's no resource to actually deliver the program. And the governor needs to take ownership of that. And a way that that's been described is in the governor's office, you'd have 3 to 5 people whose focus is public safety, whose focus, another 3 to 5, which is homelessness or people that have to live on the streets, education and training, improved job environment, and you take report every day. Every day, what are we doing? How's it coordinated? Where do I need to get involved as a governor? Do I need to get involved with Washington and federal government? Do I need to go and meet this mayor? Do I need to go to the city council? What do I need to do? And it's an activist agenda of solving problems and helping people break down barriers to solutions and taking ownership and saying, it's on me. And so that's really how we're going to do it. It's a leadership crisis. And I think that's where we're really struggling. People are people. We have very high quality people generally in Oregon. But how do you get people on the same page? That's the governor's job. And that's what leadership is. So again, what we really need, first of all, we spend a lot of resources now and get very little. I've seen $35,000 a year, $50,000 a year per person. Yeah. And we're getting so little because, again, it's all consumed in overhead. And at the end of the effort, the point of the spear, you got crumbs left. I think that, again, you want to get people to agree to the concept that people, number one, cannot live on the streets anymore. They're not allowed. So they have to go to real shelters, and that could be, it just has to be a structure that is a correct structure with heat and ventilation and plumbing, and you either build it or we have a lot of buildings that probably would suffice. And then when people go to the shelter, and people will have to go to the shelter, this is not going to be optional.
Well, what if somebody doesn't want to?
Well, then the law enforcement will be involved, and then people need to go. And I think that for all of this, we're going to put into place a structure so that people can succeed. They can go to a facility or a structure. They'll start getting help with their mental illness or drug addiction and such. And if they absolutely won't participate and no one will take them in, then they'll be back on the street, and then they will be breaking the law. And when you break the law, there's a consequence. They need to be taken off the street, and they need to be sheltered in some kind of security situation. Now, I'm not trying to criminalize, and I'm not interested in criminalizing poverty, mental illness, homelessness, but we have to put our foot down, and we have to have a stick. And it's not to hurt the person, it's actually to help them. If you come from the point of view that someone is out of control, they're suffering as a human being, and we need to move in and maybe force them against their stated desires to help them with all kinds of oversight. It's transparent. It's not to do anything to harm people. And you really care about people, that's what you're going to do. If you come at it from the point of view of they have to be free to do whatever they say they want to do, it's a rights issue, then you're going to go in a different direction. I think that's the direction we've gone into, and it's gotten us into trouble. And I would say for most citizens that I've spoken to, they agree with that plan. And if the law and the judges don't allow us to go that way, maybe we need to change the law and the judges. So it's basically, we're going to help you, we're on your side, there's advocates, there's overseers, there's transparency, but at the end of the day, you need to be taken to a place that is there for your benefit to help you. And if you absolutely thumb your nose at that and go back to the streets, then you are breaking the law, and then you need to be sheltered in a way that you may not like, with good, with adequate food and shelter and medical care for a short period of time, and then we'll try you again. We're never going to give up on you. We're not going to ruin you with this, but we're not going to let you live on the streets and along the riverbanks and in the forests. That's so harsh on you and harsh on us, so we just need to stop that. My plan.
Okay.
My plan. So again, you're biased by the people you talk to. Tends to be the people maybe that agree with you. But I've heard that from a lot of people, and I've heard that from a lot of people. Honestly, they're fairly liberal, and a lot of Portlanders that I interact with. And something needs to be done. It's clear that just saying to people, help yourself and straighten yourself up. I find it very ironic because I'm a physician. I have so many rules on me. If I get a DUI, my license is taken away. And I know that. So I go to have a dinner or something, I'm going to have a half or one drink, and that's it. Because I'm not going to lose my license, lose my medical career. But you have these people that are so incredibly suffering, and they can't control even basic things they need to do to have a chance of any kind of success or safety. And yet we say to them, well, here, we'll just give you something and you go fix it. The people that are in that situation need tremendous structure. The best example is I'll see prisoners, because we see the prisoners in Salem that have blood and cancer diseases, and they'll come in and they'll have recently been picked up. Let's say they were out on parole and they came back to prison, and a lot of times there's people on drugs and they have mental illness and such, and they come in initially and they're just out of control. They've lost weight, they're wild-eyed, you can't talk to them, and then they've been in jail for 3 to 6 months, and then they come back and they've been eating well, and they've had the medicine they need, they're no longer addicted. And I'm not saying it's good to put people in jail, but I'll just tell you that as people, how they look and how they interact and how they function way at a higher level. So the answer isn't to put people in prison, but the answer is to create a structure and to insist that they participate in the structure. And if they can't or don't want to, as long as someone takes them in, they're not living on the street, I'm okay with that. But we're not going to let them suffer like that anymore, and we're not going to have to deal with watching them suffer like that, because it's so degrading and harmful to them and also to us.
Yeah, not to mention the neighbors that they're living next to,
Absolutely.
and the homes that they're
Absolutely.
stealing from, and cars
Absolutely.
that they're stealing.
Absolutely. So we have to force a solution.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think you have guns in America, it turns out that most of the violence in guns, and if you look at the deaths and the injuries and such, are actually suicides and homicides. They tend to kill off and hurt their family members. We have a strong Second Amendment. I don't think anything that has happened in terms of the episodes of violence and lack of community policing and law enforcement make anyone in this country interested in not being able to have self-protection if they want it. It's very interesting. The political class, they all have, including the governor, have guards with weapons. And certainly the celebrity class has all that they want. So the answer is to get people back into society and being part of society. And what I mean by that is if you look at the people that are doing okay, that aren't involved in violence and gun violence and such, those are generally people that have a job, they have a structure, they're part of society. And the people that are generally suffering from violence and harm are people that aren't in that situation. So again, I think the key is that we have to push hard in society to make sure that people have a purpose in life and encourage that. For many people, that's going to be a job. It's not everyone. It could be something you take ownership of, and it could be a nonprofit. It doesn't have to be making money, but we have to structure our society so that people that aren't idle and they're getting into trouble in their idleness. And obviously the other answer is people that are breaking the law have to be arrested, and they may have to be incarcerated to protect us from them. So people that are felons that have weapons that are illegal, people that are breaking the law. I think if we can do a better job of arresting people that break the law and incarcerating as needed, with always the eye towards trying to help people be successful in life, even if they've made a mistake, I think if we go at it that way, we'll be way better off. Well, again, that was because of the reform of Measure 11 there's a rollback. So again, the law, when they did the reforms for juveniles, they took it at that point in time and said, well, as we look at juveniles, we're going to look at their sentences and maybe make them shorter or have a second look, and they didn't make it retroactive, and the governor wants to make it retroactive. What I would say primarily is the victims of crimes have to be protected, and what I mean are their families. So if you want to go down this path, rather than the governor and the governor's office deciding, and then you're notified people are going to be released, I think you have to bring in the families, because a lot of times in the whole prosecution of criminals and crimes, the family is very intimately involved in that process. And I think that they have an expectation when the person is sentenced that that's going to be carried out according to the law. And then when you roll that back, I think just bringing in the families of the victims early on and having them be an intimate part of that process will make the whole situation work better. And if you get buy-in, sometimes the family members will look at that and get involved with that person and look at how they potentially change and say, yeah, I think that's a good idea, because some of these criminals are 15, 16, 17 years old. Other cases, they may not go along. I think the governor needs to factor that in. It's not just the governor, the people convicted, and the incarceration. It's the families of the victims, and how do we bring them in at an early part of the process, and their view should factor into how that person is treated and whether or not their sentence can be commutated or brought back. Well, again, pretty much since we have a few people on death row, most of the people that are incarcerated are coming out of jail.
At some point.
Yeah, and so what I would say is we really need to rethink what we're doing. There's clearly a punishment part of incarceration, and that's a law, and that's what we're going to follow. But again, how do we prepare people to come out and to be successful? And we made these laws for the people that are now offenders. And again, I think to look at it, I'm not saying to do it, but I think to look at it is reasonable. But again, you need to bring the victims' families in to the mix early on as you're deciding and not spring it on them. I think that's what most of the DAs were really complaining about. And if it's a terrible crime and the family is really against it, and maybe that person isn't going to get out early, and that's going to weigh in. That's nothing different than when you have a parole hearing and the family pleads for the person, and I think the parole board listens to them. So I think you need to bring in the victims' families a lot more. So what I would say about the whole thing about policing and safety is trust the experts. So what I've learned in my career and life is that what we really need to do is we need to say to the police officers, chief of police, the people who know how to keep us safe and make us safe from dealing with criminals, because that's what they've learned to do and they've been taught to do and they've studied and such, is what resources do you need and how do you suggest that we best solve this problem? So, and again, in general, what you do is if you hear a proposal and you support the proposal, and then you get reports on how that's going. So I'm convinced that if you have the right police leadership and the well-trained and equipped officers, and almost all the police I've met really want public safety. They're not there to hurt people, and they want a safe society for all of us. That's what their life's about, and they want it to be safe for their family, that you'll get the result you want. I think if you go in there and tell them how to do their work or how they need to do it, I think you get into trouble. I think we should listen carefully to them and how they believe the resources need to be allocated, not how I need it. When I practice medicine, don't tell me how to practice medicine. Just give me some resources. Give me authority, give me accountability, insist on transparency, and see what I can do. And I think we need to do much the same with the police and not politicize it and not be involved with how they do their work if you know nothing about it. And really, unless you do the work on a daily basis, you don't know anything about it.
Yeah. That gap.
Well, the first thing I would do if elected governor is I would reach out to the leadership on the Democratic side as much as the Republican side and try to present to their caucus and to try to, again, I think just setting the tone is very important, that we need to work together. Because again, I'm running for office as a citizen who has been well trained in leadership in society through the work I've done. And I'm very interested in solving problems, and I'm not there for politics. I know it sounds crazy because everyone says that and they're political, but I've never taken a political science course. I don't like to argue points. I'll discuss points, but really I want solutions. And if people elect me, they want solutions. They're tired of listening to people that are arguing and getting nothing done. You know, it's so crazy. The stuff we talked about in 2015, Columbia River Crossing, Freeway 5, Rose Quarter, improving the transportation out to Hillsborough and Beaver, nothing's changed. I mean, nothing, homeless situation, nothing, safety, nothing's changed. Education and training, if anything, has gotten worse. It's like endless talking. And you hear the politicians say, well, I did this and I did that. And it's, well, you haven't done anything because the problems are worse. So if I go in there, I'm just gonna work hard on agreement. Again, it's very clear in my mind what we have to solve. We have to have a safer society. There are different ways of inputting that. I understand the legislature has to fund that, but again, we have to have, well, they have to fund it at some level. The cities do that, most of it. But we have to have buy-in. We have to have the homeless off the streets once and for all. You can't look at these poor suffering souls that are living in misery, and we're watching them live in misery, and they're suffering and we're suffering, and say that we just kind of keep doing the same old thing and not, we need fundamental change. You can't look at our education and training and how we're not educating and training our children to the highest level and say that's satisfactory. The quality has to go up, the intensity has to go up. We know that, the effort has to go up. And businesses, we want to have great jobs for our citizens, because when our citizens have great jobs, they have great lives. So that's the agenda, and we're gonna work together on this. And if you want to advance your political career, then let's achieve this, and then you'll probably get elected to something else. You can say you did it. That's great. But the issue is solving problems. So I'm gonna reach out to people. I remember President Reagan and Speaker O'Neill, and they had a great relationship. They spent time together. I come down to Portland. I know the mayor. I know a lot of city council members. I know Lynn Peterson. I know Sharon Myron. I know these people through time and working, and just sit down and meet with them and say, we gotta, can we agree on this, and can we work toward a solution? And they just stay engaged with people. And again, I've had success in my life build my medical practice in the nonprofit world, and most people in nonprofit, there are a lot of people that politically have completely different ideas than I have, but again, we can focus on the task at hand and get it done. And that's really it's to reach out to people and engage them, and I love people. I really love people.
I think you're a bit of an outsider within Republican circles. Why is that?
I think that I'm not an outsider within Republican voter circles. But again, I think that the people that are involved in politics, our system has evolved from the British system, which is antagonistic. And it's, one side, and they like to oppose each other. And I think that we have lost sight of solution-based politics for really rhetoric-based politics. I really do that. And I always laugh about it when I listen to like we talk about conservatism and such, and I say, well, conservative in rhetoric only, and there's certain points that are conservative. But when I look at conservatism, conservatives are generally people that are more matter of fact, and they're not noisy, and they solve solutions behind what the public sees, and they embrace their community and own their community, and they take on problems, and they're just people that try to bring people together. That's kind of that conservative wing that I come from, and I've gotten older, and a lot of times you get older, you get conservative, and I think that people like me actually, frankly, have stayed away from politics. Because I think it offends them or bothers them when people are rude and noisy and mean-spirited. But the beautiful thing about me is that doesn't bother me one iota. This whole campaign, I remember, I ran last time, and someone said to my late wife, does it bother you when people pick on Bud or say mean things? She goes, it doesn't bother me. He doesn't care. It bothers me when you say mean things about me, so don't say it about me. So it's really interesting. So I think that a lot of people that share my views and my style and my approach, and it's a natural place for Republicans to be, have shied away. But I think it's clear that hopefully through my effort, win or lose, I'm trying to win, that people say, yeah, I can do this. I'm going to come in and I can solve problems, and I have the leadership experience, and I have the training experience in life, and I'm going to engage. Because again, it's different when we talk about the voters or the people, the political writers, and the supposed political leaders. It's a different group. Well, I think that people should live in Oregon, and they should follow the rules, and the Constitution lays down the rules, and it's going to go to the court. These are my comments on him. I think that his predicament of being told by the Secretary of State in the Elections Division that he doesn't qualify, but now he gets to go right to the Supreme Court, is a precedent. So I guess any candidate who is rejected by the Secretary of State in the Elections Division and wants to run for governor, I guess state office, gets to go right to the Supreme Court. That's where I feel a little odd about that. I'm not sure that if Bud Pierce had been rejected by the Elections Division and the Secretary of State, that all of a sudden the Supreme Court would be hearing my case. It'd probably be like, well, why don't you start at this level of court, and you'll get 5 years from now, maybe the Supreme Court, if they're interested, will hear from you. So that's what really grates me is this person getting the same treatment the rest of us would get?
Because
and that's,
he's a world-famous.
World-famous, yeah, he's a celebrity. He's just a huge celebrity. And that's what it irks me, because again, I'm a janitor's kid. And what irks me is that when there's systems in place and we play by the rules and we go through life, if people get to jump line. And that's my concern. I want to make sure, and I hope, again, Supreme Court justices that are listening, you're going to listen to this case, this is the standard now. That whoever, and they get rejected, that at least there's some look at by the Supreme Court, not a lower court, Supreme Court. And that's where I'm a little bothered by that. I think they're going to decide if he meets the qualifications. If he meets the qualifications, he should be able to run. If he doesn't, he shouldn't. It seems to me that he doesn't. But again, I honestly, I'm real busy with my practice. I'm real busy with running this campaign. I'm not really looking into all these issues, which are very interesting and fun to read about. And as a Republican, I think it would be kind of cool to watch Nicholas Kristof and the Tina Kotek and Tobias Reed go at it with the resources they have. And I think that'd be very interesting to watch that kind of battle. But whether or not he should run, it should be following the law.
Day like today?
Well, today I got up at 4, and I got ready. 5:45 or so I was at the hospital. I was seeing patients, had a short meeting, 7:30, and then I saw patients until 2:30, saw about 38, 40 of them today, and just worked straight through. And then I got in the car, drove up here, and I got a lot of charting and records to keep. What's happened is the baby boomers have retired. That's my group. Baby boomer doctors, yeah. And the baby boomer people are getting sick, and they need to have access to medical care. And then in the COVID pandemic, we've certainly had a loss of younger people that, for really the working conditions have become difficult because of the stress of the pandemic and how it impacts the workers. So we're real short. I mean, right now I'm having situations where patients are waiting 2 months to get a PET scan. I mean, it used to be like 2 weeks at most. And I had one lady who had waited 6 weeks to get a liver biopsy for breast cancer, and that almost cost her life. So everything is so slowed down and difficult to have happen. And if I don't show up to work at this point in time, people can pass away just because there's no one to see them. It's not that they have to see Bud Pierce, but they have to see somebody. And if there's no provider, they're not going to do well. And so, kind of in my back of my mind with this run, I was thinking about an issue. Maybe I'll take a little time off and schedule. I can't do that. I just have to add it on. And we're real short-staffed. And this crisis has shown that we don't have a lot of reserve in a lot of our systems in our society, that we like to run it on that thin edge, like Toyota manufacturing. You just have the right parts at the right moment, at the right time to put that car together. And when you do that in healthcare and some other areas, and you get into a pandemic, and you get into people that don't want to work anymore, you have problems. I hope not. Hopefully we'll have a good transition. We're actually already bringing in someone next summer. And the way it'll work out is in May, if I'm the candidate and the polling looks strong, or I could win, we're going to start preparing for that. And So we can't have that happen. I'd never let that happen. But if I win the governorship, I got to serve as governor.
Okay.
I get criticism on that, but I have to answer the question. When I can't even listen to politicians answer questions because it doesn't mean anything, and I don't even know where they're coming from, and you don't trust it. So I need to try to answer the question. So thank you.
Yeah. You sort of answered this, but Oregon has blue state with a lot of deep red areas. Would you be able to represent all those?
I would. I think the main problem with the deep red areas is we've taken away their economics, because most of those areas are natural resource based and timber based and such, and they used to be incredibly prosperous. If you look at their per capita income, it was like leading in the state, and we took that away from them in our environmentalism. Really. And I think that the only way to bring them together, bring urban and rural together, is to make the rural successful again. And people say, well, they just have to. You can't, we have federal laws and such. Well, I would say if you said the Silicon Valley or the Silicon Forest in Oregon, that we'll give you 10 years, you're shutting down, we'll give you money, and you need to find something to replace what you're doing, they couldn't do it. And that's really what we said to timber and natural resources and such. I think that it's interesting that COVID has taught us that we need to have supply lines and we need to have production in America. And if you think about it, it's one world environment. So if we do the dirty work of the world in America and in Oregon, and we do it cleanly and with environmental protection, the world's environment is a far better place. And so again, if we can bring back natural resource extraction at the appropriate level, more in terms of farming and grazing and such, timber, the use of timber, and make timber products. I think, again, you'll increase the wealth of the rural areas, and then there will be interdependency. And when people are interdependent, they get along and they work together. The governor's going to have to go out to Washington, D.C. and get waivers. I think the best example of a waiver is John Kitzhaber with the Oregon Health Plan. Initially, Medicaid in Oregon everything was covered at 1/3 on the dollar, 33 cents on the dollar. No one would see the patients, or unless they were fraudulent, because no one could afford it. So he says, no, let's get a priority list, shrink it in half, and we'll double the pay, which is a little bit higher than Medicare. It's not private, but Medicare. And all of a sudden, the patients can be seen. And you had to get a waiver. So the waiver was, yeah, we're going to cut the list, but we're going to provide better service to the patients, and we're going to save some money. So I think you got to go to the federal government on timber and say, we need to have timber products in America. You have the land. We need to be able to harvest and forest this. We need to negotiate what the environmental protection looks like, but you got to help us make that happen. So again, I have a good relationship with the senators and most of the federal delegation, probably not all, but most. They're my medical advocacy. And you just got to go out there and try to create win-win. And you have to stay engaged. I think what I can bring more than anything else is energy, positivity, just stay focused on getting the job done and never give up. And that's what I can do. And so if people want someone who can actually do something or try to do something, they should strongly consider voting for me. If they want to have a talker, someone who pivots, who doesn't want to answer the question, who just wants to be there, maybe seek another office, then they should vote for someone else. Well, you know, the graduation rates have gone up, and I think that's a great thing. I'm more interested in what people know and you know, do they really know? You can make it 100%. Just give people say they graduated. So what I want for Oregon citizens and students is for us to be recognized as leaders in America and potentially leaders in the world in education and training, that we're not teaching to the test, but when we are tested, we test at a very high level, and that we have lots of Oregon students that stay in Oregon to be in leadership in high technology and education fields and throughout the country and world. And also, by the way, if we really bump up career technical education and we can get kids in the jobs of, you know, repairing automobiles and plumbers and electricians, we need a lot of those. So again, that Oregon is, when you're good, you know it. When you're good, you know it. So Oregon is recognized as a great place to live because the education of students is fabulous, and they have great lives because they're well educated and trained, and we're nowhere near that. Yeah, we're actually 49th out of 50 in terms of use of drugs, although we're number one in meth and opioids and drug misuse. And we're 50 out of 50 in terms of, at bottom, in terms of actually helping people with their drug addiction. So again, it argues a point that I brought up earlier, that if people primarily, and a lot of people that are suffering that end up dying, and not all certainly, but a lot, are living in the streets and such, and if you get them out of that environment and get them into real shelter with real programs, you can turn that around. I also think that we have to take on this drug culture. You know, we're kind of libertarian in drugs and we like it. I was reading a report that said in Canada, after they legalized marijuana, and I'm not arguing that point, we've already done that and we're there, but they've noticed that in severe auto accidents, the measurable level of marijuana in the blood that could affect that has gone from basically 10% pre-legalization to 20%. So again, drugs are a huge negative. We should have a massive public health campaign saying that if you use drugs of any kind, it can get a hold of you very easily, and it can damage you, and it can destroy you, and the best place to be is really not to use drugs. It really is. But if you do, and by the way, if you get into trouble, we're going to have robust programs of self-referral and help that aren't going to count against you in any way. We just want to get past that. I remember in medicine in 2000, all the doctors were required to take a pain course, and the first part of it was someone got up and said, "What do you do if someone's in pain?" And we said, well, you assess her. No, you give them pain medicine. You give them pain medicine until they don't have pain. That was the fifth vital sign. And then by 2015, we got people dying of prescription drug overdose. And that was, again, people with the right intention, the wrong ideas. So we need common sense. We need to emphasize that no drugs is better than any drugs. If you use drugs, don't let it control you. If it starts controlling you, we're here to help you because we want you to have a great life. It's not punitive, but it's got to have teeth, and it has to have requirements in it, that when people, that again, like I said, when people are on the streets and they're suffering with drugs and mental illness, they got to go to a shelter, and they're going there. Well, what I would say about, let me talk about environmentalism. I'll frame it in that kind of thing.
Now you're pivoting. That's a pivot right
there.
No,
but I'm going to answer that because that's going to be the thing. So I think environment that we have to think about is, number one, the environment to get the homeless off the street and all the degradation that happens with that and the trouble. The second thing that we have to do is our water resources, because again, the city still dump tons of sewage and trash into our rivers. I think that needs to be taken on. In my mind, that's environmentalism and the protection of our coast. Third is our forests. And our forests are, again, manage, try to mimic natural fires that happen in a forest where there's just nature, where there's lightning fires and it burns out and stuff, yeah, that kind of thing. And then the National Academy of Sciences has stated that humans are impacting the climate through carbon and other methods. We need to listen to them and we need to do that. So that's why I'm trying to go there. National Academy of Sciences has made a clear statement. They don't dictate how it's going to be done, what the targets have to be, but it's clear to the scientists on the National Academy of Sciences, a group formed during President Abraham Lincoln's presidency, that is a issue of our time and we need to do something about it. And I'd like to bring in practical ways of bringing in technology as it applies, but again, not damaging people's lives as they're living here now, and not certainly modeling for 50 years from now or 30 years or 20 years from now. I think what we do is what we can do today to lower carbon production and improve the environment, and again, not set these strange goals of how people are going to supposedly behave 20, 30, 40 years from now, because you don't know the technology. If you read studies from the 1850s, there's not going to be enough horses available to do all the stuff we need in 1950s because there won't be enough land for all the horses, the wheat for the horses. So again, I think it leaves that out. So yes, climate change is real. The National Academy of Sciences has stated so. They're our best group. We need to reduce carbon. We need to do a lot more than that. But again, we need to be careful how we do that and not make that a political movement. It needs to be a practical, scientific answer. Yeah, I just because the environment's more than that. I think a lot of times that all of environment is turned into climate and carbon, and it really, the water's an issue, the forest's an issue, and frankly, when you have people living without sewage and housing, all that, that's degrading to the environment.
Yeah.
It's just not good. So I want to just throw that part in.
Okay.
I think that this is a fabulous election. I want everyone to look at all the candidates. We're going to have a lot of them. We'll probably have 20 or 30 Republicans. We might have that many Democrats. I completely trust the voters to decide who the right candidate is. And there's good candidates on both sides. What I will say on my behalf is if you want someone whose complete effort is going to be to get things done, I'll talk about them. I'll keep you informed. I'll keep the citizenry apprised of our progress. But if you want someone whose complete focus is getting things done and solving problems, give me a good look. Give me a good look.